Welcome to Connecting with Coincidence. I am your host, Dr. Bernie Beitman, MD. I'm a psychiatrist in private practice and faculty member at the University of Virginia. Each week, my guests and I talk about meaningful coincidences, synchronicity, and serendipity. We discuss synchronicity from its many perspectives: spiritual, practical, and statistical. Why? To increase your connection to coincidences so that you can benefit from coincidence awareness in your daily life. I have written a book also called Connecting with Coincidence. Put the phrase Connecting with Coincidence in your web browser to find my book, Psychology Today blog, my website, and my social media sites. If you want to know how sensitive you are to coincidences, go to my website to take the Weird Coincidence Survey. That is, go to Connecting with Coincidence. Our guest today is Juliet Trail. Juliet is the managing director of the University of Virginia Contemplative Sciences Center in Charlottesville, Virginia. She helps a wide variety of efforts that span 11 schools at UVA and involve research, learning, and practice. She has a particular focus on faculty engagement programs that help connect faculty and classrooms with contemplative and mindfulness teachings. And she teaches the class Mindfulness and Compassion, living fully, personally, and professionally each spring. And one of the questions I'll have for Juliet is that being aware of coincidences is part, I think, of mindful living. Juliet is actively involved with music. Music is an active passion of her life, and she is lead singer of a Charlottesville band called Phoenix Noir, and boy, can she sing. She is also has a duo band with her husband, Jeremy Johnson, called Us, a great name for the two of them. Juliet was trained in rites of passage work involving vision quests following the Lakota Sioux tradition, and continues today to walk a path of integrating the arts, the sciences, and contemplative traditions. Welcome to the show, Juliet.
Thank you very much. That makes me sound so official.
Well, you are. I mean, you're doing a lot over there, but when you're in the middle of it at UVA doing all that organizing, it just seems like a job, but you're doing a lot, and you're singing and your rites of passage, vision quests, doing a lot. You're doing a lot.
Thank you.
Now, you're welcome. And looking at your bio as I just described you, the mindfulness and compassion, living fully, personally, and professionally, part of what coincidences involve is being self-aware and aware of self in one's environment. And mindfulness is a way of becoming aware of one's thinking, one's feelings, one's inner states, and can be a way of connecting those inner states with what goes on around the person. So mindfulness, as other people have described, can be one of the ways to exercise the mental muscle of coincidence awareness. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think it would definitely be connected. Sometimes scientists that are trying to study mindfulness now identify two different states of the brain in terms of its activity levels and how things are connecting and the speed at which things are connecting. And they call it mind wandering, which is our normal sort of unfocused, scattered thought that bounces from thing to thing. And they contrast it with a mindful state, which they call focused attention. And there's some really interesting studies looking at very, very distinct patterns that can be mapped with any of the ways that we scan and analyze the brain to identify without someone needing to tell us. Someone can look at your brain scan and say, oh, you're in mind wandering right now. And you're going to say, oh, what? I know I was trying to focus, but nope, your mind has wandered. We can see the difference. So there's something very specific going on in mindfulness, which we often begin by training with silent meditations that turn the senses inward. And it's learning to train the mind to calm down and to switch gears from mind wandering state to focused attention. And I think where we have more focused attention brought to our conscious life, even as we're in our life, interacting, moving around and having things occur, we can begin to attend better and approach that focused awareness regardless of whether or not we're doing something that we would think of as a contemplative practice. So just in day-to-day life, you become, I think, better at not being so distracted in the mind wandering state that you miss things that are interesting or significant and that may hold synchronicity or coincidence.
Yeah, and that's good. And the way in which the focused attention can operate is kind of like mind wandering into the environment and then focusing
Yes.
and then connecting what the mind finds in the environment with something going on internally.
Yes. Yeah.
And that becomes a way of that is the process of coincidence activity. I do it all the time, so and sometimes I do maybe too much. Like I was in Virginia Beach this past weekend, and I had trouble with the shower at Virginia in my hotel room. It wasn't turning hot enough. And at the same time, the same weekend, this past weekend, a plumber friend of mine was putting a new faucet into my shower, and
Mm.
and it's not a big deal about anything, but it's just the kind of coincidence finding that my mind has gotten to be doing. And I wonder how that relates to what you're describing about contemplative meditation practices.
I think it would be really interesting to get someone who is quite expert, as you are, at noticing and be able to do, some of these neural scans and things to actually capture it. It may be that the state of recognition or awareness of coincidence looks almost like the state of a heightened focused awareness in meditation. They seem related to me, but I'm not aware of any data on that yet.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
this is probably the first time
Yeah.
maybe you even ran across this possibility. The mind wandering can be useful because uh, you can you can run into stuff when you're wandering,
Yeah.
and then you can focus. So the wandering and the focusing seem to me to be two elements that can be useful when you learn how to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's part of how the brain sifts through all of the experiences that are happening, past, present, and future. And if we only had focused attention, we wouldn't actually cast out into past or future to protect ourselves or prevent old patterns from occurring that are negative or to be prepared for what's to come. So it's adaptive. It's sort of like yin and yang. You need both.
Yeah.
But the mindfulness training is quite different than common cultural training or educational training in America right now. So it presents a nice complement to not always be kind of casting the brain out loosely across time and across thought and across emotion, to let whatever comes come in our thoughts, but instead to kind of cultivate the ability to focus and calm our thoughts and then to attend to something or a small group of things with more depth. I mean, some people actually use medicinal substances, even recreational drugs, to have the capacity to attend to a smaller group of things with a great intensity of experience. It's something that humans have sought for a really long time. I think there's a longing in us to know how to attend deeply with something and not feel so scattered and so easily distracted by our own thoughts or feelings that flit through the mind. So
That's
yeah, it's just, I think it's flipping a very important switch.
I'm going to ask you for our audience, for you to describe what you just described about where the mind goes, past, present, emotions, thoughts. That's a nice description of the general categories that our minds
Hmm.
do, and then try to be, and very nicely described that we would like very much to be able to focus on aspects and not focus on other things that the scary thoughts, for example, that people often entertain and continue to nurture by paying attention to them,
Hmm.
to be able to move their attention to different emotions and different thought emotion connections. So it's What I just like that you're describing the domains of regular consciousness, the content of various consciousness. Would you just talk some more about those domains?
Yeah, sure. Well, it's interesting. It's nice that I've just launched this week my a mindfulness and compassion class. So beginning to speak about this with a group of new students has it fresh in my mind. How we begin to frame this in ways that maybe make sense to someone without that's new to thinking about it this way. And as you begin to do the mindfulness practice, the mind will still have a lot of distraction. There will be more mind wandering than focused attention that happens. Even though we're sitting still, we're trying to turn our senses inward, and we're trying to pay attention to what's happening in the present moment. And what's happening in the mind in any given present moment might be about sensations of the body, how we feel, and if we're in pain or if we feel good. It might be about emotions, which can be pleasant or unpleasant or neutral in some way. Just kind of I feel really blah, I feel kind of apathetic, maybe I'm tired, maybe I'm hungry, I don't know what I need. Like there may be some sort of feeling of ennui or concern, even about feeling neutral. So we have a whole slew of things that might be coming up for us that are emotion based. And then we have practical kinds of things that often tie to both physical and emotional experiences. So we may be worrying about something that just happened. I should have said this at this time, and we're still trying to come up with the right thing we should have said in a moment that was either heightened or seemed to get away from us. Or we may be worrying about the future, and we spend a lot of time fretting over the past and fretting or planning
Julia, we're coming
towards
to
the future.
We're coming to the end of this segment. I'm so lost in what you're describing, so very much appreciate it.
Okay.
You're listening to Connecting with Coincidence with your host, Bernie Beitman. We'll be back after a short break.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone broadcast network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365. Gwilda Wiyaka's latest book, The Science of Magic, Book of Mysteries, Volume 1, is the first book in a series based on her writings that open every episode of the Science of Magic radio show. Drawing on the subject matter of each guest, and armed with over 40 years' experience in shamanism, 35 years in alternative health, and degrees in psychology and religious studies, Gwilda introduces relevant and leading-edge information that supports spiritual evolution and personal empowerment. Rich with wisdom and inspirational quotes packaged in digestible segments, this is a book that will pull you from cover to cover. It will also serve as a daily inspirational reading for years to come. The Science of Magic Book of Mysteries, Volume 1 is available at our website, tsompublications.com, amazon.com, and wherever fine books are sold. Back in Victorian England, a famous theologian posed a perplexing riddle. Why are the two top personalities in the Bible tagged with the numbers 7 and 11? Academics agree the answer is found in the stunning discovery of a hitherto secret Bible structure explained in a new book called The Genesis Grid. The discovery is so simple that preschool children could illustrate it. Certain claims are hugely controversial and may offend some, but at the X-Zone, we've studied this awesome new book and agree with one expert, and I quote, "These discoveries appear to be beyond coincidence." So who or what hid this wonderful pattern in the Bible, and what might they do next? Find out more, X-Zone Nation, and read reviews on www.genesisgrid.co.uk. That's www.genesisgrid.co.uk.
Welcome back to CC with BB, connecting with coincidence with Dr. Bernie Beitman. Our guest today is Juliet Trail, Managing Director at the UVA Contemplative Science Center, and we're broadcasting to you on the X Zone Broadcast Network. So, Juliet, we were talking about contents of the mind, which I think are very, very important in discussing coincidences. And I want to move our discussion now to how you got interested in coincidences.
Well, the last thing I would say to tidy up our conversation about contents of the mind is what's interesting, and when we start paying attention to the mind, is that something that might start as neutral, thinking about we need to plan, will bump up against something that has a resonance or a memory and maybe very emotional in nature and even physically painful. That we think of something that's difficult, frightening, or scary, and learning how to train ourselves to stay with that and not simply give up that thought and avoid that whole sector of thought or the mind or the self or interaction or possibility is part of what mindfulness training can do, helping us attend to difficult or unpleasant sensations without fleeing from them. And I think that relates to being someone who attends also to coincidences and synchronicities, because when you're more open to allowing thoughts to bump into associations that might bring up both physical and emotional content or sensations or triggers with them, you get to notice more of the positive, which we might say the coincidences are often quite positive in nature, and you're more comfortable with the ones that may have a more difficult association, that you can hang in there and be present with a negative or unpleasant experience or thought without just simply shutting down. And opening up the mind is kind of that skill set itself.
Good. So how did you get to notice and get involved in thinking about coincidences?
I started noticing them, even as a younger person, and thinking about us talking together today. I thought about, the times in which I've seemed to magically bump into somebody when I've been traveling around the country, around the world, and there they are. And I thought, how could this person possibly be here out of all the places to be on this entire planet and all the beings on this planet? I'm encountering someone I already know in this really unlikely environment or circumstance. So I know that that's a first, very conscious moment for me when I was about 11 or 12, being in Las Vegas, Nevada on a road trip with my family, visiting relatives that lived there. And we're driving down the road on the highway. And I look into the car next to me, and there's a kid about my age, and he looks into the car next to him. There's a kid about his age, and our eyes connect. And it's like, oh, there's Scott from my class. And we're riding down the highway. We wave at each other like, hi. And, it's just someone from school. It's from my class. It's someone I know. And we're sort of like traveling together side by side in family station wagons down the highway outside of Las Vegas, Nevada for a few minutes. We weren't in town. We were outside of town somewhere. And it was just sort of traveling along with him for a moment. And then we waved to each other, and then our families took different turns, and our vacations split off again. So
where did you go? Where was the town you were coming from? Where did you live at that time?
Oh, I lived in Greensboro, North Carolina, all the way across the country.
Yeah, that's what makes it less probable.
Yes.
To run into that guy right there on the highway from almost 2,500 miles away.
Exactly.
There you are looking at each other. And some of the other stories I think we're going to go to with you have to do with this human GPS capacity that you seem to have, because I get really intrigued by the various ways in which people get involved with coincidences, that there are certain people that are drawn to certain kinds of coincidences. Mine have been simulpathity, that is the experience of pain of a loved one at a distance, and human GPS. And the stories you've told me, and we'll go through some of them, have to do with you and human GPS. So this may be your predisposition, your predisposing coincidence type. I think I'm starting to see that in various people. What do you think about you as a human GPS kind of coincidence person?
Well, I definitely think it happens in my life, and even people tell me about their own quite freely. So it may just be some sort of intuitive skill set somehow.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. That's what I think.
you and I have talked about the psychosphere that maybe would be like a earth-based collective consciousness place where minds might be connecting even when bodies are not, that thoughts are bouncing like radio waves out into and across our physical domain.
Yes.
And, I have also met up with friends that I'm concerned about in a dream, and they have dreamed at that same time of meeting up with me, and we've checked in. So sometimes when I'm worried about someone, it's as if I would cast out to make sure they're okay. Or I'll have friends call me and I've been thinking of them and meaning to call them and just being a little concerned about what's happening. And they'll call and say, I keep thinking of you. I know you need me to call you. So I'm good, or this thing is going on. I'm not so good. So there's dreams, and then there's sort of phone calls or communications that come to me that people are like, oh, I know we need to be connecting right now. And it's been very present with me for several days when they say this already, like, oh, I really need to get a hold of so and so because it's been too long and I just want to make sure, see how things are going or something. It's not always distressing events, but there are times when I seem to also, as you were saying, the simulpathity, like intuit that people are very stressed out that I care about. And that something may be going on, some sort of conflict or turmoil or something. And I just think I should be there for them. And somehow, either through actually connecting by phone or even meeting up with them in a dream, it seems like I'm able to relay that I'm there for them and kind of interact and ground our relationship, at least as one source of potential comfort for them with whatever's going on. So those are kind of ancillary to human GPS, which is definitely one that I've thought about more specifically.
To me, they go together sometimes.
Yeah.
And I tell you where, but just wanting to check into with someone to see how they are.
Mhm.
I include that under simulpathity because it's pathity refers to feeling, the
Yeah.
feeling the person has. It doesn't have to be always awful or terrible, like somebody
Right.
dying or in great pain. And so you're telling me that you have both capacities, the simulpathity one and the human GPS one. And the way they come together is these stories that I've collected of someone showing up someplace that he needed to be because a person he cares about is in trouble, and he doesn't know how he got there. He just
Mhm.
knows he had a feeling to go someplace, and it's the GPS part of it is what you describe sometime, and you'll tell us your uh, your New York Museum story where
Yeah.
you end up someplace. So with where you want to be. So it's a kind of a tracking. You track the person's presence out there, and then you move in a way without knowing how to where that person is. So tell us that story.
Yeah, and it actually comes back around to a little sense of simulpathity that um, it was needed on both sides, this meeting. So um, it's a very nice story. Several years back was the 25th anniversary of the film Labyrinth, which for me as a young child had a big impact on me, and I just loved it. And I'd also loved The Dark Crystal. And Labyrinth and The Dark Crystal were joint ventures. They were created and written and visualized in a partnership between Jim Henson and Brian Froud. And Brian Froud is a very, very famous illustrator who has written lots of books on fairies and gnomes and sort of the beings from another realm that can touch upon and perhaps even be seen or interact with people in our realm, which is quite part of the superstitious or conventions in England where he lives. So Brian Froud lives permanently in England. Jim Henson passed away when I was in high school, the very early 90s. And Brian would be the only person who was the creator of both Dark Crystal and Labyrinth I might ever get to meet. And he is probably my very favorite artist still living at this time in our lives. And he was coming to New York from England with his wife and son, who both helped with the film, to be interviewed by the Museum of the Moving Image, which is a film museum in Queens, outside of New York, and outside of Manhattan. And they would be with Brian Henson, who's Jim Henson's son, who also helped especially with the puppetry and was the voice and the puppeteer of Hoggle. And so I came from Virginia in a whirlwind weekend trip. I had to take a 6.5 hour bus ride up on Saturday morning to see the screening at the Museum of Moving Image on Saturday night. And then I would have to catch the bus again on Sunday at 5 o'clock to do another 7 hours back and be back at work on Monday. So it was a very quick trip. I was in New York just a little more than 24 hours to see this screening. And the screening had the potential for meeting him in person, which I was incredibly excited about. I really wanted to meet and interact with Brian Froud. And then at the screening, things went awry. One of the couples present with my host and good friend Laura Lee, there was a couple there fighting, and a boyfriend stormed off, and the group became stressed, and we ended up sitting kind of scattered and not where I wanted to sit. And even though I'd been the first person in line, I ended up getting pulled from the line at the last second, and not being able to be close to the panelists after the film to feel that sense of connection or interaction. And then I learned after the movie that we'd already been booked by others to immediately leave the museum and go to something else to support somebody else's friend doing music. And so I didn't get a chance to speak with him afterwards. And I really felt very frustrated. It was sort of a spiraling out of control series of events. And I was longing to meet him. The next day I decided to console myself by going to the Met Museum to just commune with some art.
The Metropolitan
Museum of Art in Manhattan. Yeah. So I traveled into Manhattan because I'd been staying outside in Brooklyn. Traveled into the Metropolitan Museum in Manhattan, was wandering around for a couple of hours with my friend and host Laura Lee, and we needed to leave to catch transportation down to where I would catch the bus. And we didn't want to leave it to the last minute. So we started to walk towards the exit, and I sort of fell back into this beautiful little lemon yellow Spanish gallery that was out towards the exit path we were taking from the museum.
We're coming to the end of this segment, so I want to stop with the lemon yellow. You're listening to Connecting with Coincidence with your host, Bernie Beitman, on the X Zone Broadcast Network, and our guest, Juliet Trail.
From our broadcast studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, to the world and beyond, you're watching the X Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net.
AVS Media Demo.
The scientist and the mystic have been on an age-old, relentless search with one thing in common. They seek truth. Their paths converge in the 40,000-year-old practice of shamanism, an ancient science delving to the quantum level of life, facilitating healing, manifestation, and evolution. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Arts School, a unique Colorado State certified occupational school training shamanic practitioners and teachers. We also provide classes for empowering personal lives through shamanism. Our certification classes are in week-long segments enabling international participation, and online classes and long-distance shamanic healing sessions are available. Come discover the science of magic in the limitless world of shamanism. www.findyourpathhome.com.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365. Rob McConnell here, presenting an overview for Nicholas Paul Jennings, author of a fascinating book, Amen. It presents facts revealed by Egyptologists, facts that enable us to understand why Amen is the beginning of creation of God. It provides recommendations for religious leaders of the major religions to unify their beliefs and teach the Word of God. Love one another. Amen informs people how mankind conceived God. It was the Egyptians that developed the concepts of a soul, a hereafter, and Son of God. And finally, after the worship of many gods, they conceived the belief in one universal God, the maker of all there is. For more information, visit www.futureofgodamen.com. That's www.futureofgodamen.com.
Welcome back to CC with BB, Connecting with Coincidence, and our host and our guest, Juliet Trail. Juliet, we were last talking with you, we were last walking with you in the Metropolitan Museum of Art, looking at a lemon yellow room, and you were looking for something. You didn't know Brian Froud. You got there somehow for some reason, and continue.
Yes. So yeah, this little gallery beckoned to me. It was like it winked at me, flirting, like, come this way. And so I said, hey, Lorelei, we still have.
Could you describe that feeling, beckoning to you, winking to you? That's so cool.
Yeah, I walked by, I passed the door. There was something about the door that was like, you're supposed to come this way. And I said, huh. And I stopped. I said, hey, Lorelei, we have time. We're not in a rush yet. Let's go to one more gallery. I want to look in here. And it was just a weird feeling. It was like, something tapping you on the shoulder and being like, come this way. Because I had actually walked past it and not entered it. I stopped, caught my friend and said, we still have time. Let's go this way. And she said, okay, sure. Yeah. So it was just, I don't know. It was a kind of intuitive feeling of just being attracted to something.
That's the feeling I want our listeners to pay attention to. That little nod, that little wink, that little finger thing saying, coming over here, because go this way instead of that. There's so many stories I have of people tuning into that, where a husband and wife are going to buy a house they don't like, and he takes the wrong way going back home, and there's somebody putting a sign out for a house that they actually bought right when they go by, because that was the right house for them. Yep. And he had a feeling of going the wrong way, and you had this feeling of not necessarily going the wrong way, but taking this way, and that's really cool. And that's part of the training of coincidence awareness, is to be able to tune in to that kind of feeling, and that you did. You chose to follow that little wink, that little nod, that little urge, that little pull.
Yeah.
So
I walked into the gallery, and there were multiple entrances to this gallery, and from across the opposite entrance, immediately just after I've walked in walks Brian Froud by himself. Not with an entourage, not with a crowd, not having to wait in line to get a signature in 30 seconds, but just sauntering, with all the time to just be there. And Lorelei and I said, Lorelei, that's Brian Froud, because I was very excited. And so we walked over trying to be calm, and we said, hello, you're Brian Froud, right? He said, yes, I am. And we ended up speaking with him for about 45 minutes. And getting really lost in a really deeply interactive and connected conversation. And it turned out that he was feeling a sense of despondency and feeling kind of adrift at that moment in New York. And he'd been trying to sort of console himself with art as well, because he was not sure who he was creating for. He wasn't feeling like he was really creating for any particular audience. And Lorelei and I were literally jumping up and down. And we're like, no, we're your audience. And she told him about an entire warehouse installation workshop where she trained all the young artists to create an enchanted forest in New York in this old warehouse, all inspired by his work. And it's covered in the media, and there are pictures online that he could go see how he had inspired her to train other artists and set designers to build a Brian Froud-like forest in a warehouse in New York for a party event. And I, at the time, had a friend, Kat, sitting for me back in Charlottesville, Virginia, where I lived, staying at my house and taking care of my cats, who had a piece of work from Brian Froud's Dark Crystal, his design of the universe that he drew in that film, tattooed on his entire back. And he had borrowed my copy of a huge coffee table Brian Froud book to get the piece to the tattoo artist. And he had just recently gotten it done, and we had connected over how much we both love Brian Froud, this friend and I, who was my cat sitter. So right before I left, I said, I might get to talk to Brian Froud. May I take a photograph of your entire back to show him how much your work means to all of us, that you have tattooed a piece of his art across your entire back, from the nape of his neck to the top of to the waistband of his pants. His whole back is this work. And so I was able to bring out the phone and go, look, my friend has gotten his whole back turned into one of your pieces of art. Your work completely matters. There are tons of people who find you incredibly inspiring, and we are your audience. We are here. You are not creating for nothing. We are really receiving this. And it was incredibly valuable and reassuring to him. I mean, I think we all teared up, and, there were multiple moments in that conversation that felt very magical, but it was so special to be able to give him something and not feel that I had only taken something from him because I wanted to meet a hero of mine, but actually that he had needed me as much as I needed him in that moment. He needed to know how much his work meant to some of us.
Oh, that is beautiful, and it illustrates another very, very important idea in coincidence studies. We tend to be self-involved in our coincidences. They tend to be like, look what happened to me. I ran into this person, and it was really amazing. It's important to do just what you're describing, is to see what this coincidence experience was like for the other person. And you have so beautifully described that about how important it was for Brian Froud to run into you and and get the feedback that he needed to know that there was an audience out there, and that audience really loves what he does. And you're a singer. You like to know that people are listening to your songs.
Oh yeah.
I mean, sometimes you just think like you're just howling at the wind and hoping that somebody's not talking out there and listening, but maybe even affected by it. I had something like that when I got an email from somebody in Australia telling me, Dr. Beitman, you're not correct when you said on your radio program that you had the only radio show on synchronicity in the world. That's not right.
How nice to be corrected on that.
How nice to be corrected. And there's this guy named Chris Mackey who's on a radio show in Australia, and they've been doing this for a while. And so you're not the only one. And in fact, they made fun of the fact on the radio show that you have said that you have the only synchronicity radio show in the world. So he sent me the link, and it was really fun to hear. There's 3 people on the program. Chris Mackey comes in, and there's 2 hosts that have been there for a while. And wow, we've got this program. It was such a compliment to hear people criticizing me for that, but there's no way for me to know that there are other shows unless somebody tells me. And that's what this guy did for me, and that's what you did for Brian Froud. And this guy recommended that Chris Mackey be on my radio show, and I'd already arranged for that. So he and I'll get a few laughs about that also. But the feedback that you gave Brian Froud is invaluable to this guy. And so you are able to represent not only your experience, but his experience. And when people have coincidences like this, it's really important to get out of your own mind and see the experience of the other person, which is what you just provided for us. That's very good. That's very good. When you've had other GPS-like experiences, and in the time remaining, which is just about 3 minutes, 3 minutes in this segment, could you talk a bit about how you think this works? You talked about the psychosphere, how you particularly might be involved with it.
Yes, there just seems to be a dimension that is not limited to physicality and the physical manifestation of molecules and muscles and bones in our body self. There seems to be another place where we dwell in this life and where we can interact and contact each other. And that sort of longing or yearning to connect draws the physical self towards the other person who might be also longing or yearning to connect, that there's some sort of meeting between two beings who have a presence or a draw. And then the physical self just kind of pulled along in the wake of it. It's sort of coming as an afterthought. And the body's just catching up to something where consciousness is already connecting ahead of us, ahead of physical reality.
Very good. Very good. And when you, in the contemplative science group, how preeminent is the idea of consciousness? My impression is that it's mostly a brain-oriented research place, and not so much that consciousness is like the primary thing, as you described it, that helps draw the body to another person or to another place.
Yes, we still don't have the right instruments to study consciousness. We still don't know what it is. It's completely ephemeral. And so at this point, the field is very new, contemplative sciences as a subfield of the sciences, and it's heavily neuroscience and influence because we finally developed the tools, the research methods, and the actual equipment and instruments that can show us things about the physical brain. But we still don't understand where the soul or the spirit or consciousness itself may lie and how it interacts with the physical self. So we're just sort of limited by the science we can do now. But I do believe our science will continue to become more sophisticated and learn how to begin to see and measure and evaluate some of these other things that are happening on the level of consciousness. We just can't do it yet. I think we're novices as a species with studying consciousness in a scientific way. We can only study it in kind of an interpersonal or psychological or intuitive way. We don't have the equipment to study it in a more quantitative sense.
Oh, that's partly right and partly maybe not. You familiar with the Division of Perceptual Studies?
Right. Which parapsychology is attempting to posit what the phenomena are and to study it in all kinds of various settings and in measuring effects and outcomes, at least, if not the conduit of information.
And what I'm trying to do is not just do near-death experiences or reincarnation, which they do at Division of Perceptual Studies, but do these everyday experiences of coincidences, which I think show some of what we're talking about. We're coming to the end of this segment, and you are listening to Connecting with Coincidence with your host, Bernie Beitman, MD, on the X Zone Broadcast Network, and our guest, Juliet Trail.
Named one of the world's greatest psychics, Elizabeth Joyce is now giving readings worldwide via Skype. Elizabeth Joyce is recognized for her clairvoyant ability to help find missing persons, her analysis of dreams, past life regression work, mediumship, and her accurate predictions. Elizabeth has been a frequent guest on the X Zone radio show with yours truly, Rob McConnell, now for several years. For an appointment with Elizabeth Joyce, call 201-934-8986 or Skype at elizabeth.joyce. And for more information, you can always visit Elizabeth Joyce online at www.new-visions.com. The new nonfiction book, Razor of Madness, is similar to cult movies like Clockwork Orange, Dragon's Tattoo, or The Other Side of Hell. Wayne Morin Jr. and Thomas Lee Howe will expose widespread and systematic deficiencies in this thought-provoking tell-all novel. Mind control rages among scholars in law schools. Human rights are ignored while thought reform and mental manipulation are accepted practices used as behavior modification. Dr. Louis Jolyon West comes to mind. Media and public scrutiny shows that United States mental hospitals are in fact destructive murder industries. Razor of Madness exposé novel details this epidemic through an in-depth professional and personal investigation. For decades, there has been a revolving door policy that still releases killers and pedophiles back into society. The maestro of mind control continues to haunt America to this very day. Razor of Madness is available in paperback or as a downloadable ebook at Amazon.com.
I'm William S. Peckham. If you enjoy a good mystery with a touch of the paranormal, then you'll love my novel, From Out of the Woodwork. It's the story of a young Toronto contractor, Sean Kennedy, who buys derelict homes, guts them, and turns them into multifamily dwellings. Slums just waiting to happen. When Sean buys 29 Livery Lane, the house fights back. Former owners unexpectedly come out of the woodwork as he starts the destruction. The apparitions come to him when he touches old books, reads hidden letters, rummages through old boxes, finds a locket, or reads a discovered manuscript of a murder mystery. From Out of the Woodwork will take you from 1899 to the horror of the World Trade Center, September 11, 2001. Check out From Out of the Woodwork on my website, www.williamspeckham.com.
Welcome back to Connecting with Coincidence. I am your host, Dr. Bernie Beitman, MD, and our guest is Juliet Trail, who, among other things, appears to be predisposed to human GPS kinds of coincidences. And Juliet, we'll get back to talking about consciousness and how I think coincidences are begin to be indicators of how we are connected through consciousness, and that data can be collected first with stories and multiple stories, and the stories then aggregated to find patterns. And then in finding those patterns, it may be able to discover ways of measurement. And human GPS is something that has been measured. It got a different name. It's called psi-mediated instrumental responses, PMIR. It's a long name, but it means that psi influences responses that help you somehow, instrumental responses. A guy named Rex Stanford did this research, and it didn't get picked up much by other parapsychologists, but he was president of the American Parapsychological Association, and the human GPS follows along with what Rex Stanford was doing. But please give us another one of your stories, like that Chalice Well story in Glastonbury.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a pretty good story.
Yes, it is.
So the background of why the Chalice Well is important is also significant. So when I was finishing college in 1996, I realized I wanted to find the symbol for a tattoo that I would get with my very closest friends that I saw as members of my tribe or my chosen family in this life. And I started searching for it, and I didn't find it for 16 years. And when I finally found it, it turned out to be, I knew it was the symbol for me before I knew where the symbol was from. So then I found the symbol, and I thought I should do some research. I do research. It's the symbol on the Chalice Well of this ancient spring in Glastonbury, England. Years before, I had been to Glastonbury, England, and tried to find the well with my significant other at the time, Steve, and we never found it. It's not in the city proper. It's outside of it, and it's not clearly labeled, and it's not a major place of obvious pilgrimage. It's kind of a subtle pilgrimage. A lot of people do know about the sort of legendary nature and healing properties of the waters of the Chalice Well that have been held by legend for thousands of years to have healing properties and be quite magical. But I had not found the Chalice Well, so I had not seen this symbol in person, even though I had been in the city and looked for it years before, in about 2001 on a trip. And then I found this symbol in maybe, 2008 or 9 in a fairy store. And when I walked into the fairy shop.
A fairy store?
Fairy store. It was a store for fairy imagery and fairy trinkets in Lynchburg, Virginia. Like the fairies, like butterflies with human bodies. And I walked in because I went to a fairy store in Lynchburg, Virginia, which is a very small, very Christian, very conservative community. I would never expect anybody to create a fairy store and have it not be like glass shattered with things thrown through the window for daring to do something that wasn't Christian. So I walked in, and it was very magical, and everything about the fairy shop felt like my favorite one I've ever been in, which was a fairy shop in Glastonbury, England. And I walked up to the proprietress, and I said, this shop feels just like my favorite one in Glastonbury. And she started squealing and jumping up and down. And she said, I built this shop because I went there and it changed my life. And I wanted to put it here. I can't believe you intuited this is the American version of that very shop in Lynchburg, Virginia. And I look down the jewelry case. I see the symbol on a ring. I'm wearing the ring right now as I speak to you. And and I say, oh, that's my symbol. That's the one I've been looking for, I don't know, 16 years or so, since the first time I had this thought. I am looking for this symbol. It will be a tattoo I share with members of my tribe. And it had always been with me, but I had not hurried it. I had known I would get this tattoo. I do have it now. I have it on the nape of my neck. And two of my very closest friends, Laura Lee and Pam, both have it as well. And other members of my friends consider getting it in the future. So it is the symbol of people that are part of my chosen family. And so I actually, 2 years later, was able to travel to England with my mother, and where my mom was born in London. So she is English and hadn't been back for a very long time, having married an American military serviceman when she was young and come to America. And she hadn't traveled back to Europe since that time in the late 60s. So very special to be on a trip with her. And we decided to go to Glastonbury. We were in Bath, which is very nearby in England, that my mom wanted to see. And she said, well, I know you have this thing about Glastonbury, so let's go there for you. I said, okay. So we get on a bus from Bath to go to Glastonbury. We still don't know where the Chalice Well is. And I don't buy like a smartphone in Europe or anything, so I still don't have like map apps at my ready. A woman comes up to us on the bus and she says, my name is Penny, and I think I'm supposed to travel with you today. Are you going to the Chalice Well? And we said, well, we'd like to, but last time I was in England, I admit I couldn't find it, so I don't know where it is. She says, oh, I know it very well. I'll tell you all about it, and I will take you there.
Wait a minute, wait. Why did she come up to you?
She just, the people were getting on the bus to leave from Bath and travel on a bus to Glastonbury, and they're finding seats, and the bus is somewhat crowded. My mom and I had entered early in the line and sat towards the back. And she comes to us at the back of the bus and she says, I think I'm supposed to travel with you today.
So she was picking up something about you.
Yeah.
Already.
She found us. She found us.
She found you, and that's a human GPS kind of thing, and it's also what I think is picking up information around your in your aura and your electromagnetic field around you. I do that sometimes. When I was looking at went to the McGuffey Center for Laura Lee's art thing. A couple of weeks ago, she introduced me to somebody who was an elementary school teacher, and that was what I knew. And I said, "What's first grade teaching like?" And she said, "How did you know I was a first grade teacher?" So I had a predisposition teacher, but I picked the right grade without thinking about it. It was as if I had been told that she was a first grade teacher. And this woman came to you as if she had been told that she was going to do it. And that information comes somehow. It has to happen somehow. There has to be a way to do it. And I think it is picking up information from auras, electromagnetic fields around you, because you were really vibrating, finding the Chalice Well. Yeah.
And when I got to the Chalice Well, beside the well, there is a group of women praying, and they invite me to join them. And they're doing a ceremony to pray to heal the world, that the world is very fractured, and the earth itself is struggling with all the damage being done to it by humans. And they asked me to join this circle of women, and the guide took my hand, and I stood. My mom wasn't really comfortable with this. It's a little too woo-woo for her. So she's like, you're good. This is your thing. I'm going to go off this other part of the garden and just sit. And I took part in the ceremony praying for the healing of the planet and the earth and the beings on the planet with this woman. And at the end, her group dispersed to go visit the gardens around the well, and she stayed. And she said, I'd like to know more about you. So we introduced ourselves. And her name is Juliet, and my name is Juliet. And she is a guide who takes women on pilgrimage and journeys, particularly to Glastonbury, to the well, and to the tower on a hill nearby that's also very famous, to do healing work. And I was trained in a Native American tradition, the Lakota Sioux tradition, to do rites of passage, healing work around processing one's major life transitions and acknowledging those through going out in nature. So we were both quest guides in our respective communities, and we're both named Juliet, and we end up holding hands for a prayer I believe very much in, which is the healing of this planet and the beings on this planet, standing next to each other. And then her group left to go to the tour. My mom and I went to the gift shop, and this woman rushes up to me and she says, "Are you Juliet?" And I said, "Yes, I am." and I'm feeling very strange, but the whole day felt very strange. She already knows my name. And she said, "You're the one who leads the people onto the land to do the work, right?" And I said, I do that work, but I do it in Virginia in the U.S. I think you're looking for the other Juliet who lives here in the region, and she's already gone to the tour with her group for the day. And it was this mother with 2 sons, and I don't know why she was trying to catch up with the other Juliet. But she first knew I was one of the Juliets, and she sought me out to ask if I was the guide who leads the people onto land. And I'll be leading a vision quest at Wild Rock, a natural area nature playscape in Crozet, Virginia this summer. So I am also a Juliet who leads the people onto the land to do healing work. But I knew I was not the Juliet she was looking for. So it was a series of unfolding GPS events to have met all of these people on that day.
Wow. That is that means to me that the Charlottesville is a spiritually high place. There's pockets of these. Even here in Charlottesville, Virginia, the health food store, the alternative health food store of Integral Yoga is a place where a lot of coincidences take place, partly because it's infused with Yogaville consciousness. And then this place, and you're tuning into it, elevated the possibility. And this is the kind of thing that I think can be studied, not necessarily with machines yet. Well, it's still too primitive.
Right.
But
not with machines, but other ways.
But just by reports. This is medicine has proceeded and still does to some extent by case reports, where somebody gets an idea and then you get a bunch of case reports, and then you collect them, and the collection yields some kind of pattern that then you can figure out a way of testing. And what you just described says Glastonbury, and there are other places that have the potential to get consciousness of the people involved into places that allows connections like this that wouldn't necessarily happen in the Bowery in New York City. Or
even in the ferry shop in Lynchburg, Virginia, where I suddenly knew that I was in the presence of somebody also affected by Glastonbury.
Exactly.
And I was. The shop owner was affected by the same shop that I can remember everything about that shop when I stepped into it in 2001. It was an incredibly vibrant, magical sort of place. It just had this powerful energy to it. And it was quite beautiful.
And we're coming to the end of our program, and what I just saw in your description was some kind of consciousness link between those two places, those two ferry shops, and that you could walk into it like fairy stories, but they're connected across time and across space, and you could walk into it. So thank you very, very much, Juliet, for being on the show. I'll see you when I see you. And
yes, thank you, Bernie.
It's great having you, Juliet. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Modern Esoteric, Beyond Our Senses by Brad Olson, consummates the lifeology story about where humanity originates. It is the lost continents, the primitive wisdom, the mythos of creation, and the rethinking of ancient history as we are taught in academia. There is much more to the story than what we have been told. As this is the first book in the Esoteric series, Modern Esoteric starts at the beginning of time and accelerates up to this modern age. Future Esoteric is book 2 in the series and takes a forward-looking position ahead of today with an open and honest examination of the ET issue and various unexplained phenomena. To discover the writings of author Brad Olson, visit www.bradolson.com. That's www.bradolson.com. Are you or is someone you know struggling with addictions, depression, anxiety, relationships, low self-esteem, lack of confidence, grief, success, and prosperity? Do you know that your subconscious belief plays a big role in the outcome of your hard work? We can help you permanently change the beliefs that may be the reason for your struggles and failures. We care about getting you the return on your investment and the results you are looking for. We can help you be free of the limitations of your past and in realizing your highest potential. We work with people by phone and Skype. For more information, visit us at www.ritasoman.com. That's www.ritasoman.com. Do you think you have energy problems in your home? Do you feel better when you're away than when you're home? Joey Korn is a global leader in the world of dowsing who specializes in personal energy clearing and space clearing. He can help you create an ideal energy environment in your home no matter where you live in the world. Learn about his remote spiritual house cleaning services and much more at www.dowsers.com. You can get Joey's book, Dowsing, A Path to Enlightenment, as well as other dowsing books and tools, Kabbalah books, and Walter Russell books. Joey's work is really amazing. Go to dowsers.com right now. That's DOWSERS.com or call 1-877-DOWSING. That's 1-877-369-7464.